to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, August 7th, 2015 here. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today here. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. Tom is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Quick program note, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us in our third hour with her unique point of view on the world and a little bit of personal good news in the music category that she may deign to share with you. Now, before we get into the news here, I want to do a follow-up on what happened during the radio show yesterday. In the middle of the radio show, all of a sudden, my website started acting a little bit weird. And I got very upset because, it's Drupal, it's the bad code, it's all the rest of it. And as it turns out, it was none of the above. Our server got hacked in a big way. In fact, looking at all the malware that was being planted all over the server, I think maybe whoever was doing it made a mistake because the visible signs of the problem didn't shut the site down. It's a little less convenient to use, but it's still working. It's still up there. People are still reading it. And most hackers, when they're trying to compromise the system, they don't want to call attention to themselves. So I think whoever was doing this messed up. And I'm going to be spending the weekend putting the server back together. The hosting company is running a security audit all over. They found all kinds of things that were put in there. They've tracked a whole bunch of IPs back through a couple of layers. I think they're a lot better at this than the National Security Agency is, rather. But that's what happened. We got attacked. Maybe it's Hillary's people, and maybe it's Israel. Or maybe it's even the NSA itself, given that the botch-up seems to signal a government effort. But that's what's going on, and please bear with us while we put the site back together one more time. All righty. Obviously, the big news is last night's debate, and I did have them on. I was listening to them while I was working through the code on the server. There is no question Donald Trump just shone. He was ascendant, he was confident, he was funny, he was engaging the audience, and any image that Fox News may have still clung to about being fair and balanced was gone. It was clearly from the beginning, let's all jump on Donald Trump and get him out of here, get him out of the way of the Republican establishment because he's an embarrassment. And before I get into the details, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call. Andrew in New York, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. The Fox News debate, it shows that, Fox News were asking, hard, bold questions to Donald Trump. But if you saw, Jeb Bush, they were always asking him, easy questions and promoting him. Oh,
they were spoon-feeding him. In fact, Jeb Bush is on Fox News right now. They've been running an exclusive interview with the presumed candidate, and they're selling. They're selling. They're trying to basically recover from last night's debate, and they're desperate to basically find those people who didn't actually watch the debate last night or know somebody, first person who watched the debate, and try and convince them that, yes, Jeb Bush was the star of the debate and pay no attention to that Donald guy here. He's not real. And the bias was very, very obvious in that, they went right for Donald Trump right at the beginning. Megyn Kelly was there with her little black leather outfit and her bullwhip, trying to beat him into submission with that comment about his attitude toward women, and Donald Trump turned it around with his punchline about Rosie O'Donnell, and the audience roared. And you could see it on Megyn Kelly's face. You could just read the thoughts in her mind. Hey, Donald, I'm a feminist. You're supposed to roll over and play dead when I attack you. And, later on, basically, Donald Trump told her what's going on. I don't have time to be politically correct, and neither does the nation. And he's absolutely right. And the audience responded to that. And even the chair of the Republican National Committee is now out there describing Donald Trump as a refreshing breath of fresh air for the GOP voters. And his attraction is that he's not one of the branded, groomed establishment candidates. He's a maverick, and people are seeing him like that. And he was funny, and he never lost his cool, unlike a lot of the other people up there on that dais. And then, of course, Megan tried to put him on the spot, to say, we want to vow from you that, you will not run third party and you will support the presumed candidate, meaning Jeb Bush. And Donald comes back and says, I absolutely vow I will not run third party if I am the GOP candidate. And the audience laughed again. And, boy, Megan, the steam was coming out of her ears. This was not going the way she wanted it to go to please her particular corporate political masters.
Was about to say, I think they'll find certain ways to, try to, destroy Trump anyways, but, did you hear about, Windows 10, how, a lot of people say don't download it because, it's gonna, allow people to share your, files and everything?
Oh, Windows 10 problems are a lot worse than that. We're seeing over on Twitter already the hashtags are going up about what a disaster it is. People are loading it onto their machines. Their machines aren't working. Their old software won't work. Apparently, the downloaded Windows 10 will not support multiple monitors. That's a feature you have to pay a monthly fee for. You even have to pay a monthly fee for the solitaire game. And the backlash against Microsoft is already building. And why anybody in the executive suite over there at Microsoft thought this kind of loss lead bait and switch was going to work, it isn't. I mean, people are very, very angry, and people who are on Windows 7 and Windows 8 are saying, we're not switching. We are not switching. And by the way, if you're on Windows 7 and you go to Windows 10, you cannot go back. Their attitude is, we got you now.
I heard something about, government hackers. I heard, half of them are, paid by the government to, do their dirty job for some reason.
Well, we certainly know that the U.S. government spends a huge amount of money on what they call cyber warriors, a hacker by any other name. We know that Israel's government pays a lot of hackers to go on out and cause trouble for any websites critical of them. I imagine Hillary's probably hired her little squad of cyber criminals to go on out and attack websites that are not supportive of her candidacy. The Internet has become a battleground here, and they're trying to basically overwhelm it with money and resources the way that they did corporate TV, because they don't know what else to do here. And again, we got the hack that hit our website yesterday is very sophisticated. I don't think they intended to announce that they'd done it by messing up the web page. It feels to me like somebody goofed somewhere. And we're going to put it back together over the weekend. And my hosting company is doing this big security audit, and but we already found and removed all kinds of stuff that was planted on there to make it easy for them to log back in the future and everything. So, they slipped up by messing up the formatting of the site.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. We're seeing all the articles now. The corporate media is still out there trying to push the branded conformist establishment candidates, and Jeb Bush is still on Fox News. They've been running him now for a good 10 minutes. Oh, yes, I am confident I am going to be the 2016 Republican nominee, even if I have to shoot every other GOP candidate out there. And but we're seeing online a very, very different picture here. Over in Politico.com, Donald Trump terrifies Republican field, and they're talking about just how smooth and calm and collected he was and how the audience just responded to his jokes. And, Trump wasn't buying into the PC stuff. He wasn't buying into Megyn Kelly. In fact, after the interview was over, Trump didn't pull any punches, saying that Megyn Kelly is overrated, angry. Yeah, she proved that last night. She's just a hired hack with a pretty face and a lot of makeup that was melting by the end of the day. And he's absolutely right. He's not going to back down. Last night's debates were an attempt at a Trump bashing, and it failed miserably. We'll be right back. Hi, America. Welcome back to the show. And during the Let's Bash Trump festival last night on Fox News, one of the issues they tried to back him into a corner over was his comments about illegal immigrants. And Donald did not back down. He says, we need a wall to keep them out of this country. And he says that the governments of Mexico and Guatemala and all these other places are using this open borders to dump their criminals and undesirables on the American taxpayer, and says our politicians are stupid to go along with it, and he's right on both accounts. And the only way that we're going to be able to get any points against Trump on this is if everybody falls for the politically correct nonsense that we are not allowed to say what's there before our very eyes. And the audience ate it up. And what this is signaling are two things that we need to keep in mind. The American people are fed up with politics as usual, and the branded, trained, conditioned, corporate-approved, manufactured puppet candidates we get election after election after election. They're sick and tired of that. And from the audience response to Donald Trump's comments, it is clear that the political correct movement has had its day. It's on the wane. Nobody feels like being politically correct anymore. It's turned out to be just a complete abject batch of nonsense, like this nonsense over the Confederate flag or the Gadsden flag. Trump managed to basically walk all over Chris Wallace on the bankruptcy laws in Atlantic City because Trump's been there. Everyone's trying to make a big deal about the fact, well, he's a billionaire. Yeah, but he did earn it. He didn't game it on Wall Street. He bought and sold real estate all his life, and he built hotels and he built casinos. Not all of them worked out, but at least he's out there in the trenches getting his hands dirty. Remember what Teddy Roosevelt said about the arena? The guy who's actually out there trying to make it work, and if he succeeds, it's great, and if he fails, at least he tried. That's Trump, as opposed to these career politicians who think it is their taxpayer-funded job to sit back in lives of comfort and pass judgment on everybody else's efforts, or interfere with them to make them feel like they have authority. Now, there was a little bit of a sideshow to this circus last night where Rand Paul and Chris Christie went after each other on the issue of national security, where Rand Paul is saying we have to rein back this unconstitutional surveillance of law-abiding citizens, and Chris Christie turned on him and screamed about, you have no idea about the war on terror and, national security. And basically, these two came off looking like they were more interested in digging at each other than anything else. And it did show. Rand Paul got less than half the time on the air that Donald Trump did. Supposed to be an even batch. No, they were putting all the attention on Donald Trump. Donald Trump soared, got a huge chunk of the airtime. Rand Paul appeared to lose his cool going into this thing, and probably the fact that one of his campaign people, just been indicted for fraud, was wearing rather heavily on his head at the time. But the bulk of the airtime went not to the candidates, but to the moderators. They spent 31.7% of the airtime doing all the talking. They were out there trying to make their points, trying to craft this whole thing. And they failed. We're seeing articles like in USTomoNews.com, Trump takes first GOP debate, nothing sticks to Teflon Don. Another story out of Government Slaves, Trump goes to war with Fox News. Story here on Politico.com, Trump wins the Internet. The corporate media, especially Fox News, is going to be going on out there saying it's no big deal. Really, you should be looking at Jeb Bush. He's definitely our presumed candidate. And but on the Internet, Donald Trump by a landslide. He's dominating Google searches. He's dominating Twitter. Over at the Drudge Report, they had a poll who won last night's debate. Donald Trump got 44% as of the last time I checked. We ran our own poll on WhatReallyHappened.com. The numbers are even more striking. Jeb Bush, as of the last time I checked, Jeb Bush had 7 votes. Ben Carson, 21 votes. Chris Christie, 3 votes. Ted Cruz, 6 votes. Mike Huckabee, 3 votes. John Kasich, 20 votes. Rand Paul, 40 votes. Marco Rubio, 7 votes. Donald Trump, 530 votes. 82% of the respondents. Scott Walker, 6 votes. It's there. Trump is the maverick, and the American people are responding to that. They don't want the establishment. And the more the corporate media starts berating Trump because he's not part of the political establishment. Well, the political establishment was never meant to be an exclusive priesthood. Certainly wasn't set up that way. Not by the Founding Fathers. We're going to take a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Dustin, are you there? I am not hearing Dustin. All right, I'm going to put Dustin back on hold. We'll come back to him a little bit. Oh, and by the way, Fox News just ran again. Jeb Bush is confident he will be the candidate. Now they've got Pat Buchanan on there. They're basically, I think, trying to, there's the lower third again. Jeb Bush, I am confident I will be the 2016 Republican candidate. I think what they're trying to do is find all the people who didn't actually watch the debate last night and try and convince them that Jeb Bush won it. That's how hard they're trying to do this. Let's see. Now, here's some of the corporate media propaganda that's coming on out. This is from CBC up in Canada. Republican presidential debate, how Donald Trump's performance may stall the campaign. And there's a very telling quote from the article. Quote, he immediately earned the ire of the crowd. No, he didn't. And likely many Republican supporters in general, when he would not commit to supporting the party's eventual nominee. Meaning that in the eyes of this reporter, they've already picked out the nominee, and it's not Trump. And he's just being disloyal to the Republicans to not go along with our presumptive dynastic inheritor of the White House. More propaganda coming on out. Fox News was quoting Charles Krauthammer as saying, well, Trump was obviously lost and out of place, last night. Yeah. So they're lining up all these people to bash Trump post-debate for those people who didn't actually see it or know somebody who saw it. I mean, that's how obvious it is, how scared they are of him. And I wish Trump luck. I'm a supporter of his right now. They're trying to Ron Paul him out. If he gets too close to that White House, he better be wearing his Kevlar undies, because that's what happened to Robert Kennedy. And these people are desperate. These money junkies, they will do anything to keep us their debt slaves. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go right back to the phones here and try Dustin in New Jersey. Are you there?
Yeah, hi, Mike.
Okay, there you are. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Chris Christie doesn't represent all New Jersey people. He'd rather give up his freedoms for fascism.
No. He wants to give up your freedoms for fascism. He still wants his freedoms and privacy and wealth and comfort. It's only you who are being told that you must live lives of abject austerity and poverty and no privacy in a little tiny box someplace in order to save you from the evil terrorists.
Yeah, see, these people need to realize these people don't believe in the Constitution. They're globalists and they're fascists.
Well, Chris Christie was tied in very much with George W. Bush, and basically Chris Christie's rise to power kind of was at the same time as 9/11, if I recall correctly. He got appointed to a very nice position by George W. Bush, over there in New Jersey, where there were a lot of people who'd seen what actually happened that day. We know that just before 9/11 happened, Israeli's state shipping company, Zim Shipping, broke their lease at the World Trade Towers, had to pay a huge financial penalty to move across to New Jersey, and they got out just in time for the plane crashes. And I wonder if Chris Christie had anything to do with that.
Yeah, because I was at the morning on 9/11. I was home at the time, and I watched that on the George Washington Bridge. They stopped that white van and wound up being the Israelis in there.
Yes.
People need to realize who's really involved. It was 16 people. They can tell you anybody they want. People need to do some research. Hey, Mike, I want to talk on Zero Hedge on August 5th. There was a good article. It says U.S. Turkey to form anti-ISIS coalition with Saudi Arabia and Qatar. People need to read this article because it shows you a map of all these pipelines, 3 pipelines, and people need to realize this is the war against Russia. And, that's why Russia and China has formed an alliance, not just with BRICS, but with the oil pipelines and the gas pipelines, because, they see a potential cutoff of going from the Iranian pipeline from Iran through Syria to Greece being cut off, or not, because, that goes to Europe.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, the idea isn't necessarily to cut off oil to other countries, although that's a very heavy hammer to affect foreign policy with. Obviously, whoever's got their hands on that valves is in control of conventional warfare, because conventional wars cannot be fought without huge amounts of petroleum products to fight them with. But again, I still think the major agenda at work here is for all of these oil-producing countries to be under U.S. puppet rulers who will sell those oil and gas products only for the U.S. dollar to keep the American financial system propped up.
Yeah, you could be right, Mike. You could be right. It's coming to where, if you, that's the main income of Russia. That's war.
Yeah, it is, but it's not their sole income, and Russia's pivoting to all those other countries. If Europe doesn't want to buy Russian gas, Russia's got a lot of other customers waiting to take advantage of it.
You see, that was smart. So that helped them to diversify. By creating this mess, they diversified, and they're finding new partners like Brazil for chicken and other countries for cheese and stuff. So the Europeans...
And more than that, it created the political will for Russia to start redeveloping their own domestic systems for manufacturing and agriculture, not be sucked into this global dependency, which means global control. And that, of course, is exactly contrary to what the New World Order wants. The New World Order wants this one country to grow all the corn, and this one country over here to do all the electronics, and that country over there to do all the cars, and that country over there to make all the clothing, so that everything has to be shipped always across the world, going through their hands and their means of transportation, so they get a piece of the action, to keep everybody dependent on everybody, to keep them under control. And what all these sanctions have done is started convincing the rest of the world it's time to rebuild our domestic self-sufficiency. And that is definitely not what the New World Order wants to see right now.
You know, it's funny. It's like with all the European countries that have sanctions against them from Russia, that's more of a strain on the EU, so basically it's backfired. Yeah,
it has backfired. The oil price war and the sanctions have caused far more economic harm in Europe and the United States and Canada than within Russia itself. And Merkel's in serious, serious trouble because, I mean, we're talking about 7,000 German companies that were doing business with Russia have gone out of business since these sanctions went in. And that's not helping Germany's economy. It's not helping their tax base. Somebody sent me a photo from one of these German parades, and if you're familiar with what's going on here, over in Germany, they don't pull any punches, and they will have these parades and very, very explicit floats making political commentary, and we've shown the pictures over the years. And apparently the most recent one, they sent me a picture, and I even put it on a story about Merkel at WhatReallyHappened.com, where you've got an Uncle Sam without his pants bent over, and Merkel is basically flying out of his sphincter. And, yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
And France is in trouble, too, because if you look at that WikiLeaks, they got some serious financial issues, and that Mistral deal didn't help them. And also the airplanes with India didn't help them either, because India is buying a lot more Russian airplanes.
Yeah, India canceled the deal for the French warplanes because they weren't sure they were ever going to get them. And they're buying the Russian Sukhois. And there was just an embarrassing situation where some of the European warplanes went up against the Sukhois in war games and just got their hats handed to them.
All right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over here to Dennis in Florida. Aloha, Dennis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. I want to talk about the debate a little bit. I watched it, and I appreciate your enthusiasm for Trump. I mean, he's a maverick. He's saying the things that people obviously know is wrong with the country. I mean, but there should be more credit given to Rand Paul, I think, only because he talked about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And if you're going to lean on anything in politics, if you lean on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and that is the foundation of your policies, I'm all on board for that.
Yeah, but, you know, we've had presidents campaigning before, such as George W. Bush and Barack Obama, who make a big deal about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights during their campaign speeches. And I got to be very honest, Rand Paul is not his father's son. And as much as I supported Ron Paul, Rand Paul is just a politician. He's going to say whatever he thinks the public wants to hear to get their votes. He's already in trouble dealing with these corruption scandals within his own election staff, and he's not polling very well. I mean, let's be honest. Right now, the three real candidates are Walker, Bush, and Trump.
Walker.
He's in third place. Well, he's in second place in some of the polls.
Can we not both agree that the elections are rigged anyway, so it really doesn't matter? But what I'm saying is the best thing about what's happening to Paul is at least in talking about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, at least there's people getting informed that maybe not otherwise would be. You're
not going to convince me to go with Rand Paul. For one thing, you know, he is joined with Mike Huckabee and Hillary Clinton in that who can kiss Israel wetter, deeper, and harder. So thank you very much for the phone call, but no, I'm not interested in Rand Paul at this point. I like Donald Trump because he says what he says. He's not politically correct. He's not pulling any punches. I don't think he's ever going to see the White House, that being the reality in this country. He may even wind up, you know, dead under suspicious circumstances. But I still like him because he's out there talking the truth. He's talking about real problems. The illegal immigrants. You can't argue against him. The only argument Fox News brought against him was it's politically incorrect for you to say these things. And Donald Trump said, I don't have time to be politically correct, and neither does the nation. And that's the big quote right there. We can't afford the luxury of political correctness any longer. We're going to be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, over on the Democratic side of the political campaign, the Democratic National Committee has released a debate schedule for Hillary Clinton that very clearly is as biased to support her as the GOP is biased toward Jeb Bush. A lot of the other people considering a Democratic run are already out there saying this is an attempt to put Hillary out there on the front and only have her debate people that she knows she can overwhelm. Now, of course, once Biden officially declares that he's a candidate, that may have to change. But we're seeing this. It's so transparent and obvious. They want to choose our candidates for us. So no matter how we vote, we get screwed. Now, when this country was started, anybody could form a political party, anybody could choose a candidate, anybody could be a candidate, and because of limitations on campaign financing, campaign budgets were a true measure of a candidate's popular support. But over time, they've tried to disconnect the idea of your popular support from how much cash you're getting from the money junkies. We certainly saw that with Ron Paul in 2008, 2012, where Ron Paul clearly had the grassroots popular support, but they shoved him out anyway because he was not willing to kowtow to the money. He will not worship the money. And Trump appears to be more of the same. He doesn't have to put himself out for sale. He's got his own money. That's what really makes him attractive. Nobody's going to own him, and that is such a shock to the bankers, to Wall Street, to Israel, to the military-industrial complex. They're used to owning the presidents year after year after year after year. The only argument is who owns a bigger piece. Sort of have the president up there on a wall chart, you know, lines going across. This is the brisket, this is the rib, this is the shank and the rump, and I'm buying this part. And they carve them up like merchants arguing over a carcass. Trump's not going along with that. That's why they are so afraid of him. And that's why I had doubts right at the beginning. When he first announced it, I said, it's another vanity thing. No, he's going to shake things up, and we need that badly. Now, getting on back to the Clintons, they have released the tax returns they filed on their admitted taxable income. And when we get Larry Nichols on the show, you'll understand why that's an important comment to make. But on their tax returns, they basically acknowledge $140 million in taxable income since 2007. Basically, the last 8 years. They've made $140 million that they admit to and paid taxes on. Now, a huge amount of their charitable donations, in fact, almost all of it, went into their own foundation, which doesn't seem to actually have the paperwork for being a tax-exempt charitable foundation. So they're playing fast and loose. But this idea that Hillary is putting out that she and Bill Clinton are just everyday, ordinary Americans, it's a joke. It is a joke. Her lifestyle shows it. Bergdorf, Goodman for clothes, $800 haircut. She's out there in the Hamptons talking about the plight of the American worker at a $2,700 a plate fundraising dinner. I'll bet they're not serving GMOs there. All righty. Moving on. Over in the Ukraine, Kiev's military have bombarded the Donetsk Republic 32 times over the past 24 hours. They're keeping a running total out of Donetsk. And Donetsk envoy is saying that the OSCE is shocked by Kiev's decision not to sign the treaty on weapon withdrawal that was being proposed. They were looking at this disengagement treaty where everybody was going to pull the heavy weapons back from the line, and at the last second, Poroshenko said, no, we're not going to do that. We like our howitzers and our tanks right where they are. So we all know who the aggressor here is. They're still trying to make it look like somehow this is all Russia's fault. It's nonsense. Speaking of Russia, the United States has now extended more sanctions against Russia into the areas of marine oil and gas. And they're basically sanctioning the oil and gas field in the Sea of Okhotsk. And Russia will just turn around and sell that oil and gas to China or India or anybody else who wants it, who thinks all this sanction stuff is nonsense. It's all backfiring. Now, as you know, one of the areas of contention that was going on were the Kuril Islands. They're trying to stir up conflict over there. Oh, the Russians and, the Japanese, they're arguing. Russia's basically pulled the rug out from under that one. Russia has extended an invitation to Japan to jointly, economically develop the Kuril Islands and share in the proceeds. Let's not make war, let's make a deal. That's what Putin is doing all over the globe. He's making deals while the U.S. is trying to make wars. Now, over at the Ron Paul University, their director was interviewed on Russia Today, came right out and he said the root of all evil in Syria is not Bashar al-Assad, it is the U.S. intervention, which is also true for Yemen, Iraq, Libya, Ukraine, everywhere. It is all these U.S. interventions and overthrows that are leading to all this violence and suffering. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a quick phone call here before the news break. Jay in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I wanted to ask about your thoughts on Minister Louis Farrakhan's recent comments about having 10,000 fearless men rise up and kill those who kill them.
I really don't pay a lot of attention to Farrakhan. I have to be honest about that. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot. Now then. We were talking before about the potential for war and what poor quality weapons the United States produces for the vast sums of money poured in there. And I think a lot of people are really starting to actually, for once, evaluate U.S. and European-produced weapons in terms of can they actually go out and do the job. And right now, the Pentagon is in a bit of a panic because China just unveiled its DF-21D Dongfeng missile. This is a missile designed specifically to hunt down and destroy aircraft carriers. It is reported to be capable of traveling at Mach 10 and have an effective range of 1,200 miles. The U.S. has nothing that can match it or defend against it. Now, not too long ago, we had this story we reported where the Joint Chiefs of Staff called in one of the top Navy admirals and said, if we go to war against Russia and China, what is the estimated life expectancy of our carrier battle groups? And the admiral said 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if you keep them in port. And as you know, the Theodore Roosevelt has been recalled from the Persian Gulf because it's in need of some kind of repairs that cannot be done out at sea. Now, I mentioned this in the phone call before. Down in India, their Air Force, which flies the Russian Sukhoi, engaged in war games with British fighter jets who were flying the Panavia Tornado. And the Sukhois scored a 12-0 victory against the Royal Air Force Typhoon jets in what is called visual range dogfighting operations. In large force exercises, which includes missile tactics, the Indian Air Force jets were a little less overwhelming, but still held a decisive edge over the Typhoons. Western weapons development is all about making weapons companies rich, with a piece of the action going to the appropriate members of Congress. These other countries, they're spending the money to get the most effective weapons they can. And the fact that the U.S. and Europe are spending so much money on the weapons of war does not, in fact, guarantee us victory in a confrontation. And that is a new reality everybody better start looking at right now. We got to take a break for the news. We'll be right back. Hello, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. And following up on the stories about the Chinese carrier-killing missile that the Pentagon doesn't know how to deal with, the overwhelming victory by the Russian Sukhois over the British Panavia Tornadoes. There's another story that was just sent to me out of Russia today. Apparently 3 of our newest submarines have been what they politely term impacted by the discovery of unauthorized welding repairs. These are the Virginia-class submarines. And apparently this includes one that was commissioned only last week. And then somebody was inspecting it and discovered there were welding repairs in the piping connecting the reactors to the propulsion system. I don't know from this description if they're talking the primary loop or the secondary loop. In either case, it's a serious situation because there's no paper trail on these repairs. And that means somebody was trying to fix something and hoping nobody would notice. And this affects the USS Minnesota, the USS North Dakota, and the USS John Warner. And they're now undergoing inspections because something's going on that nobody knows about. Somebody put these welding repairs in there because of an issue that was never reported, and neither were the repairs. You don't want to mess around with those reactors. I mean, Admiral Hyman G. Rickover has got to be spinning in his grave. If there's one thing that he insisted on, I mean, Admiral Rickover is considered the father of America's nuclear navy. And his top priority all the time was safety, 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 safety. And while Rickover was in charge of America's nuclear navy, it had an amazing safety record. The only losses that we suffered had nothing to do with the power systems. The Thresher was lost due to a brazing failure that threw water all over the electrical system. The Scorpion was killed by an exploding torpedo battery. They still argue back and forth about it. There's still people who say, oh, the Russians sunk both of those things. We've got to go after the Ruskies and everything. Anyway, now, the other day we were commenting on how a large number of congressmen are now over in Israel being wined and dined and shown Holocaust photos and getting to meet the new Christian Dior supermodel and whatever else they're doing over there, to basically convince them to support Bibi Netanyahu's agenda in the Congress of the United States of America. Personally, I think we ought to slam the doors on the Capitol building shut and change the locks as long as they're out there. But Steny Hoyer is out there in Israel having a good time saying that whatever happens, the Israeli-American relationship will thrive. Well, Steny, your relationship with Israel may thrive. Personally, I'm ready for a divorce from Israel. It hasn't really worked out very well for me, and I think it's time to call it quits. And I think a lot of Americans are probably in agreement on that one. All right, so looking at the current battle over the Iran deal, Israel's propaganda appears to be winning, certainly in the Congress. If the corporate media polls are to be believed, more and more Americans are being convinced that, yes, if we sign this deal to keep Iran from building a nuclear weapon, there'll be a mushroom cloud in their front lawn in 24 hours. It doesn't make sense, but propaganda seldom does. All right, so looking at a quick head count, senators that are trying to support the Iran agreement, 0. Senators who admit that Iran has had no nuclear weapons program and never threatened or been a threat to the United States, 0. Senators who are out there pushing the idea that Iran is a nuclear threat but are going to support the agreement, 16. That's Tammy Baldwin, Barbara Boxer, Dick Durbin, Dianne Feinstein, Kirsten Gillibrand, Martin Heinrich, Tim Kaine, Angus King, Patrick Leahy, Chris Murphy, Bill Nelson, Jack Reed, Bernie Sanders, Jean Shaheen, Tom Udall, and Elizabeth Warren. Now, the Republican and Libertarian senators indicating they're going to try and kill the agreement leading to war with Iran, total of 54. Basically all of them. So we need to come up with 54 parachutes, 54 rifles, 54 bright day-glow orange jumpsuits, and a cargo plane big enough to hold all 54 of them to drop them over Tehran here. Because these people are moving forward for war because war is good for business. It's good for their stock portfolio. And it's not like they or their families are going to have to be in that. That's what you people are for. That's what, your job is to breed these soldiers and send them off to play the great game for global domination. Israel has launched an airstrike into Gaza, supposedly in retaliation for a couple of bottle rockets launched somewhere in Gaza toward Israel, only one of which actually got out of Gaza. Israel's position is they hold Hamas responsible for any and all attacks coming from Gaza, including, obviously, the ones that Israel starts itself. And as usual, the rocket that landed in Israel hit empty dirt. So let's talk about the economy here. We're starting to see a pattern. Once again, it's a Friday, and we do not get our traditional Friday happy ending from the markets being massaged by the plunge protection team. They massage, and they want that happy ending. Didn't get it. Dow closed 46 down, NASDAQ down 12, S&P down 5. Not significant, not jump off the top of the building red, but we're seeing more and more of these Fridays happen. And the reality is the Dow has lost almost 1,000 points from its last high about 6 months ago. And if this keeps going, there will be a bit of a panic. Of course, what's going on is the Federal Reserve is just creating all kinds of money out of thin air and going through Wall Street, and they're buying up stock issues as fast as they're being dumped to make the market look like it's good, but it's all counterfeit money. The reality is, out here in the heartland, we now have 93,770,000 Americans willing and able to work who cannot find a job. The labor participation rate is at a 38-year low. And here's another statistic for you feminists. 100% of the female employment gains since 2007 have been taken by foreigners. Your citizen, American citizen female job involvement has not improved. The feminists like to say, oh, we're succeeding, look at all these women getting jobs, and they're coming from other countries. It's all messed up here. All right, since 2007, the United States has lost 1.4 million manufacturing jobs. Those are the high-paying jobs on which the American economy, the consumer economy, rested. But not to worry, because we've gained 1.4 million waiter and bartender jobs, which don't pay anywhere near as much, but from the point of view of the federal government, hey, the employment rate stays high. That's another one of the big lies about that 5.6 unemployment rate. They're not talking about the high-paying jobs that were lost and replaced with a low-paying job or 2 low-paying jobs or 3 low-paying jobs. They don't talk about that part of it. A job is a job is a job. Yes, you used to be a PhD engineer in a high-technology firm, and now you're flipping hamburgers. But, hey, it's a job. You should be happy. Now, interestingly enough, there's a story over at Investment Watch blog basically saying that people who do not have college degrees are now more likely to achieve the American dream than those with a college degree who also are saddled with up to $100,000 in student loans. And a lot of people go to college as a fashion accessory. They get degrees in things like women's studies. How do you make money with a degree in women's studies, other than being a professor of women's studies? We're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. America, welcome back to the show. We're talking about the economy, and there are so many indicators that things have gone horribly, horribly wrong because of that private central bank and its design policy of producing more debt than money with which to pay that debt. And the government's out there saying, we have a 5.3%, that's the new number, 5.3% unemployment rate. It shows that we are successful. The labor market is coming back. We have all these college graduates who are working as warehouse workers. That's not an efficient use of talent and resources. Meanwhile, over in San Francisco, Mayor Ed Hall is trying to fix their budget shortfall with a plan to sell corporate advertising on the City Hall building. And it's going to be an electronic billboard. It's going to be privately funded by Aspcura Digital. It's going to cost $1.5 million for the installation, and then it will be available for anybody who wants to pay the city of San Francisco to put their brand on City Hall. I think it's almost a little insulting to do that. Now, I got an email from Great Britain. We were talking the other day about how as an economy starts to fall apart and confidence in the nationally issued or banker-issued currency begins to wane, you start seeing the emergence of regional, local alternative currencies. And it's usually a red warning sign things are getting close to the breaking point. During the American Civil War, a lot of the cities in the South started issuing their own currency because there was massive counterfeiting going on to destroy the currency of the Confederacy itself. And then, of course, as the war ran on, the money just got in trouble. And we saw that also in the United States during the Great Depression of the 1930s. Well, actually, the not-so-Great Depression of the 1930s, because we're a lot worse off today than back then. So this email from Great Britain is reporting that Bristol, the second largest city in Great Britain, is now printing their own currency for use within the city limits. And that is a red warning sign that things are not good over on their Highnessnesses' islands. Now, there's a little article here from Investment Watch blog. Insider trading is considered the most common white-collar crime. What is it? Why is it illegal? And more to the point, why isn't anybody getting arrested for it? Now, the way the stock market is supposed to operate, anybody can buy and sell stocks, and you make those decisions on the basis of publicly available information that's coming out in journals like the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, news reports, announcements by the companies themselves. We are going to release this new product, huzzah, huzzah, like when Apple announced the iWatch. Insider trading is when somebody who's an investor gets advance information about what a company is going to do before it is public information. And it is illegal because if everybody on the inside is trading on the basis of information that nobody else has, they have an unfair advantage. The law against insider trading is intended to keep the playing field level for everybody so that everyone can share in the profitability of the American empire. And it is illegal. It's only rarely enforced, and certainly not against members of the United States Congress. who are in possession of changes to economic domestic policy before the general public finds out about it. They even attempted to pass a law specifically for members of Congress to not engage in stock trades based on what they learned in the Capitol building. Not too surprisingly, that law was voted down in flames. It is illegal already under the current insider trading laws for members of Congress to be buying and selling stocks based on what they see happening in the back channel discussions before bills are made public. And they do it all the time. It's just sort of accepted. I think in the blueprint for the new America, it's not enough to have the president's fortunes placed in a blind trust so that he's not making national decisions on the basis of his own stock portfolio. I think the same should apply for all members of the legislature and for all top appointed government officials. And if they don't like that, they should find some other line of work. The reason so many people are trying to get into Congress, if you enter Congress with a little bit of money, you're going to leave with a lot of money. And again, going back to the Clintons are acknowledging $140 million in income over the last 8 years. I don't think they got that on Hillary's salary as Secretary of State. Call me silly, I'm just not thinking Secretary of State is paid that much. Now, the Department of Homeland Security is admitting there is a new surge of illegal immigrant families coming across the border. They're just pouring on in. However, we are getting reports that the same Department of Homeland Security is getting ready to reallocate funds to enforce the border through the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're going to cut that budget and spend the money on other things like the Secret Service and the Department of Homeland Security's cyber operations. So even as they're admitting the immigration problem is getting worse, they're saying they're going to take the money that was allocated for enforcing border controls and they're just going to spend it on something else. There's no point wasting it on the border controls. They're coming on in and they're going to get amnesty and you might as well get used to it. So we're going to take the money that we were supposed to spend sealing the border and spend it elsewhere. And a little reminder, President Eisenhower, under Operation Wetback, and yes, it's politically incorrect to say, and I'm going to go on saying it, was able to absolutely shut off all immigration across the border with Mexico with only 1/10 the resources that are currently in place. If Eisenhower can do it, why can't Obama do it? Why can't Bush do it? I'm in agreement with Donald Trump. Let's build a wall there. Let's just wall it all off. We have an inherent right to control who does and does not come into this country. And certainly we don't want criminals coming in. We don't want people carrying dangerous, contagious diseases. And over in Santa Maria, California, they've just arrested an illegal immigrant. He's charged with murder and rape, and he was already on probation for a previous crime. And still they won't send him back home. It's amazing. All right, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Hello, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're coming up here. Well, we're basically halfway through the program here. Now then, we were talking earlier about how the stock market has been in decline, and it did not have its traditional Friday happy ending today. We're looking at some of the numbers here, and apparently the big media stocks took a major clubbing today. And it is a reminder that although all of these news channels, and by the way, Fox News is now going on about how great Carly Fiorini shined in the first GOP debate. They're basically promoting everybody except Donald Trump. And I think people are just turning them off because all of these news networks, they're always arguing about their audience share. I have a bigger share of the audience when they're negotiating their advertising rates with their sponsors. And what nobody really talks about is total size of the audience has been in decline for decades now. The industry term is viewer flight. They're all leaving. And the majority of people, polls are showing consistently, the majority of people are coming to the Internet to get their news and information. There's a big push to turn the Internet into just another content delivery system for the established corporate media. And they're spending a lot of money. They're not getting the results because, just like we saw with that audience at the Fox debates last night, and that was an audience that was, pretty much picked. Oh, yeah, you're going to be in favor of what we're saying. Come on in. And the audience just sat there and laughed at Megyn Kelly's pathetic attempts to bait Donald Trump. The days when the government could tell the media what to tell you and expect the majority of you to believe it, those days are gone. They're not coming back. Not anytime soon. Not after Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas and torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin and a Spanish mine in Havana Harbor and Lusitania, innocent ship was carrying no weapons, and all of these things have been proven to be a lie. Remember when the USS Aiea blew up and they tried to blame a gay sailor for it? That one was pretty pathetic. Anyway, it's almost like if people in the military and the government, lying is the first thing that occurs to them. Oh, we've had a problem. Well, let's make up a fairy tale about it. Those sheep out there, those taxpayers, they'll believe anything we tell them. Nope, not anymore. Not anymore at all. Now, for some reason, there's a big debate going on over the flaperon found on Reunion Island over there in the Indian Ocean. Now, as soon as it was found, the part number was sent to Boeing, and Boeing came back and said, yes, this is a component from the Boeing 777 aircraft. And Malaysia's government has said, yes, this is from the missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. But we're getting all this stall from other places about, no, we're not sure. They can't actually prove it's from Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. It's too heavy. It couldn't have floated and all the rest of it. And it's sheer and utter nonsense. And you have to wonder, why are they even bothering? Okay? There are only 4 known crashes of Boeing 777s. 3 of them happened on land. One on approach to Heathrow, one on approach to San Francisco, and one shot down over Ukraine. The 4th is Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 that vanished over the Indian Ocean. Most likely another one of these numerous accidental victims of military exercises, like TWA 800. By process of elimination, if you've got a piece from a Boeing 777 floating in the Indian Ocean, the only place it could come from is Flight 370. So why is somebody out there trying to cast doubt on it? Well, because obviously they'd like this to go away and not start backtracking and finding more of that debris. Because more of that debris may have marks on it that don't fit with the official story of kooky, crazy pilot just commandeers the aircraft and takes them away. Now remember, about a month after Flight 370 was lost, oil workers in the area who'd been on an oil platform out of touch with the mainland rotated home, and they went public saying they saw the aircraft shot down. And there was a joint U.S.-Thai naval exercise in the area at the time. Virtual repeat of TWA 800. And we know the U.S. weapon systems aren't always careful about checking their targets, both because of TWA 800 and the shoot down of the Iranian Airbus by the USS Vincent. The United Nations acknowledges there have been 27 of these accidents, most of which still remain covered up. But there was an Aer Lingus flight that was an accidental shoot down by the military. An Atavia was shot down. It does happen. It is a reality out there. The involved militaries don't want you to think about that, but it does happen. And that's a reality. And the only reason I can think for anybody to go out there and try and cast doubt that the 777 flaperon found on Reunion Island is from Flight 370 is somebody who doesn't want anybody following up and looking for more wreckage and debris. Now, down in San Diego, there's been a big publicity campaign for people to stop driving their cars and start riding bicycles, even sharing bicycles, for the good of planet Earth, to save us all from human-caused global warming. And the reality is that people are just going on doing what they've been doing. They're not giving up their cars. They're not sharing bicycles. There's this little thing set up where there are these publicly available bicycles. You will ride it, you will leave it in a stand, somebody else will come along and ride it, and along with the idea of possibly transmitting diseases from crotch to crotch to crotch, it's not a guarantee a bike is going to be there when you need it, is the reality. And a lot of the bikes have just been flat out stolen. But they're pushing this Agenda 21, austerity. You all have to live in little tiny shipping containers because the money junkies want larger green lawns in front of their palaces. And people aren't going for it. People understand that the wealth inequality in this country has reached dangerous levels. Now, I'm not a socialist, okay, but common sense has to tell you that there has to be a mechanism where the money that is siphoned up out of the top of that pyramid has to be recycled back down so that ordinary workers can trade their labor for decent wages and salaries with which to pump that wealth back into the pyramid and keep the system going. When the top 0.1% have all the money, the economy is going to stall because there are not enough hours in the day for those people to go out and buy all the consumer products necessary to keep the system going. They're only going to buy one iWatch. They're not going to buy the millions necessary to make the business venture work. Our economy is very much out of sync and balance because corrupting influences have rigged the system that way to feed the money junkies' addiction. And like any other addict, they don't see the damage that's being caused to the world around them. They just want that next fix, that next zero after that name, a bigger pile of ink and paper notes to roll around on and have orgasms with. And the system is very much out of whack. And I think we can all look back at the movie Wall Street, and Michael Douglas is out there saying greed is good. Well, under controls, yeah, we all should be ambitious. And those people who want to get rich should try and do so the way that Donald Trump did, buy and sell real estate, build hotels and casinos, Steve Jobs, the Apple II, James Cameron, wonderful movies. That's how capitalism is supposed to work. Not sit in an office on Wall Street jiggling numbers and rigging computer code and buying the politicians to make what you're doing legal. It has destabilized our society, and we're seeing it all around us, and convincing us all that we have to live poorer lives to keep the system ticking along just a few more years. That's a tough sell. And yet that's what we're always hearing. You must make do with less so we can have more. You must make do with less so we can have more. You must make do with less so we can have more. Not going to work. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we were talking before about Donald Trump's comment, I don't have time to be politically correct, and neither does the country. And he's absolutely right. This political correctness nonsense has gone way too far. Thomas Paine wrote that if you are concerned about offending somebody, then you can never tell the truth. And what we need right now in this day and age is the truth about what's going on with the economy, with immigration, with pharmaceuticals, with GMO, with the rush to wars. And this political correct nonsense is being used as a distraction. And a good example, of course, is the flap over the Confederate flag. Oh, it represents slavery to these people, therefore the rest of you who had family who served as officers and so forth, you have to give it up. And they were talking about, well, we've got to take away Thomas Jefferson because he owned slaves, and we went down Mount Rushmore and showed how every single buddy on Mount Rushmore either owned slaves or had family who served in the Confederacy or who were slave owners. So you just scrape the entire Mount Rushmore off, it's all gone. Because they had a link to slavery, and slavery is bad. We all know slavery is bad. That's what the Civil War was about. And digging up that general, oh, because he served in the Confederacy. Well, guys, there's something to think about. First of all, in the post-Civil War era, that general turned out to be very liberal and supportive of the rights of the newly freed blacks. When he served in the Confederacy, he did like all the other military did. He followed his orders. at a time when they knew the real issue was economics. It wasn't slavery. Now, to show how completely over the top this has gone, Virginia has now issued a recall for 1,700 Virginia state license plates that have the Confederate flag on there. And this apparently is, they had a federal judge who vacated an injunction that required the state to offer Confederate flag specialty plates to Virginia drivers who wanted them. And I wonder, what are they going to do for all those people who don't want to send those license plates back in? Are they going to have a license plate police go on out, pull these people over, rip the license plate off the back of the car, and then shoot them dead for driving an unlicensed car? Now, Andrew Parker is the head of MI5 over in Great Britain, and he has basically come out saying that MI5 knew their top politicians were raping children. They enabled it. They set it up so that they could videotape and film those politicians to make sure they towed the government line. I guess this makes MI5 the largest pedophile network in Great Britain, paid for by tax money. Kind of makes you think twice about James Bond being the good guy. Meanwhile, story coming out of Techdirt, James Comey is out there saying that merely retweeting posts is equivalent to material support for terrorism. That's how completely wacko they are right now here. Now, there has been a positive note. A U.S. appeals court has said that data revealing your whereabouts, yours and your phone that you're being tracked through, is in fact protected under the Fourth Amendment. That it qualifies as your personal effects and may not be obtained without a warrant. So there's a little bit of a pushback going on there. And remember, we know that all this spying has nothing to do with crime and terror, because computer crime is still running rampant. Real terrorists, real criminals can easily conceal their communications from the NSA. We proved that. This is all about watching you, to find out where your money is, to steal pictures of your naked significant other, to steal your business secrets. The government wants you staked out naked on the ground so that they can plunder you and abuse you whenever they feel like it. That's what this is all about. That's what the system does. It's a criminal operation by a criminal government with no regard for your rights as recognized under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Okay, Facebook now has a little bit of an issue they're dealing with. There's a security flaw in what they call the support index that can give the personal information in your Facebook account to total strangers. Now, I use Facebook, and so does my wife, for purposes of promotion. We don't put our personal information in there. It's nobody's business anyway. Those people following us on Facebook, they're Facebook followers. They're not close friends who are entitled to the intimate details of our lives. And you shouldn't be lulled into thinking that they are. It is an amazing psychological phenomenon ever since the early days of online community, that people will bond with these people on the other side of the computer screen and think they're close friends. Many times the image you're getting through the computer is a complete fake anyway. Now, speaking of complete fake, there is a new hashtag mark that you need to keep an eye out for on Twitter. It's Windows 10 Fail. Hashtag Windows 10 Fail. There's actually an official Twitter page for Microsoft consumer products, and apparently Microsoft has just cratered this. I'm looking through all these Twitter accounts under hashtag Windows 10 Fail. People are saying it's locking up their machines. There's no multi-monitor support with the core Windows 10. That's a for sale, for rent add-on. Windows 10 is the bare bones minimum operating system, and if you're going to do anything else with it, you've got to buy more goodies to go with it. These are outright horror stories. Audio won't work. One window is deleting drivers and the other window is trying to find and install the drivers. So even Microsoft, with budgets in the millions and staffing in the thousands, can't make heads or tail of or anything useful with the current state of software development art in this nation. We've allowed the technology to become kludgy, obfuscated, bloated, decadent is the word. Decadent. I mean, I find it frustrating that it is now impossible to build a dynamic web page with a single computer language. You can't do it. There's HTML, there's PHP, there's Ajax, JavaScript, MySQL, all of that stuff. And each is different with different syntax, different format. And as you bounce around from code block to code block, you're having to figure out, okay, how does the comment working in this one? There's no universal commenting. The syntax is different from language to language. Boy, you try and blend JavaScript and PHP in the same file, it starts to look like Lisp, which if you're my age, you'll remember Lisp was supposed to be the first artificial intelligence language. It was a computer language with more parentheses than anything else. And it's no wonder we can't produce usable product with it, whether it's Windows 10, my website, or the Obamacare website. People just go out and grab chunks of something else that seems to work and they slap it together and they hope for the best, and they don't get it. They do not get it. Look how much the Obamacare website cost and what a disaster it was. Because nobody's really thinking the overview. What's best for the industry? What's best for actually getting saleable product out there? As opposed to the current approach of, well, we're just going to invent a whole new system over here and slap it onto the side what we've already got. Because it's quick, it's cheap, we're going to make our money now and retire to the Cayman Islands. Speaking of islands, the Antarctic sea ice reaches a new record maximum. Down under. So much for human-caused global warming. Out in California, we were talking yesterday about there's a referendum that's going to be on the ballot next year to block mandatory vaccinations. And California Senator Richard Pan has been putting out statements harassing supporters of the referendum, saying, don't you dare sign that. And by doing so, he's violating California law that says you cannot go on out and harass and threaten people regarding signatures on a referendum petition. But the California senator doesn't care. He's listening to his campaign donors from Big Pharmaceutical, and you will love your 200 mandatory maximum vaccinations. They stick needles in you all over. I keep thinking about that scene from the motion picture version of Tommy with Tina Turner, and they just had this full-body cast with needles all around it, just jamming it shut like an Iron Maiden. That's what it's going to wind up as. We got to take a break for the news. We'll be back with the lovely Lady Claire after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645, 877-300-7645. For those of you on BAM User TV, the gorgeous creature sitting here behind is the lovely Lady Claire, who deigns to join us every once in a while on a Friday with her unique perspective on the world. Before I start with you, though, I do feel I have to make a comment. I was watching the Fox News feed. I'm still watching it here. And it's amazing how hard they are working to undo the damage from last night's debate. They're showing all these clips about Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and all these other people. Nothing about Trump other than to find people to come out and say, wow, Trump's really shouldn't take... They're trying so hard, and they're making it so obvious. I think every American's going to be scratching their head saying, what the heck is Fox News trying to do here? They're trying to decide the president for us, the candidate for us? Yeah, that's what they're doing. It's what they're paid to do. That's why Megyn Kelly was looking the way she did when Trump didn't get suckered in about the comment about women. So it is rather amazing what's going on here. Oh, and by the way, Fox News is alternating all of this with, why the Iran deal is bad and needs to go down. They're trying to make a big deal out of a statement that somebody in Iran just made that the United States is basically now irrelevant and Iran's economic future is going to be much better. closening ties with Russia. And, of course, the response from America is, you can't make deals with Russia. You're supposed to be our vassal state. You're supposed to sell your oil for the U.S. dollar. You can't do that. We're going to bomb you and make it look like it's all your fault. So, Lady Claire, what is the first thing you want to talk about?
Well, an article that comes to us from Global Research, Canadian blog, Why Obama's Favorite Student Loan Debt Relief Program Will Cost Taxpayers $100 billion with a B.
Yes.
And the IBR, the Income-Based Repayment Plan, is the student loan bubble's dirty little secret. And as the name implies, the idea with IBR is that monthly student debt service payments are based on the borrower's disposable income. The less money one makes, the less one has to pay. So each month, installments under the program count as a qualifying payment, and after 300 of these, the balance of the loan, assuming it's not paid off after 25 years, is forgiven. But one of the most strange, palm to forehead moments I had reading this is that it allows payments of zero. After 300 qualifying monthly payments, so after 25 years of payments, any remaining balance is forgiven and legally discharged.
Well, I'm not entirely opposed to that because, college costs have skyrocketed way out of proportion with the rates of inflation.
Yeah.
Financial support has been cut off. They basically took college and transformed it from being about higher education and better skill sets for better careers into a fashion accessory sold on credit. Just another way to plunge those kids onto that debt hook as early and as hard as possible and never let them off. But, of course, the money junkies who set this all up, and they're not making the money they thought they were going to, they turn around, as always, and say to the government, well, look, just figure out some way for ordinary Americans to cover the losses. So regardless of what happens, the taxpayer gets screwed again for what was basically another tremendous fraud pulled off by, shall we call it, the educational industrial complex.
Yeah, I think we could. And, it's like the taxpayer is on the hook no matter what they do.
That's the way it always is, unfortunately. And but the reality is there is a student loan bubble, and the people who promote the bubble make a lot of money off of it, and when it bursts, they dump the losses on the public.
Right.
And that, of course, is exactly what economic fascism is all about. Those who make money get to keep it. Those who lose money dump it on ordinary people.
The second thing I'd like to talk about, and I don't know where this behavior is coming from, 4 cops in the greater L.A. area were arrested for torturing and beating at-risk kids at a youth camp. I read this and I thought, my gosh, where were their minds? Where were their souls? And why did they not know better? And how in the world did they get approved and greenlit to be leading that kind of a program in the first place, Mike? It makes no sense to me.
Okay, I want to back up here a little bit. These police officers were basically in charge. They were leading this program for at-risk kids to try and nurture them and support them and move them forward to help socialize them. And they just turn around and start beating them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to wonder. Maybe it was punishment duty. The cops got caught peeking in somebody's window, and they said, you're going to have to take care of the kids, and they took it out on the kids. But you're right. It does strike me as a good definition of counterproductive.
Yeah.
But there is no question police brutality has become a major issue in this country, and I'm hoping that Donald Trump is going to raise it at some point.
I would like him to do that as well.
As an issue of police brutality and not try and map it into a racist crisis like so many other opportunists have tried to do.
Yeah. And I just don't know how these people are getting trained, because especially with at-risk kids, you need loving behavior and structure.
Well, the police are never trained to do that anyway. They're trained to be policemen. And there's apparently a big stink going on over in Baltimore because the psychiatrists who are supposed to be evaluating the police officers were cutting corners. They weren't spending time with the cops. They were just filling out the paperwork and sending it in. And apparently one of the psychiatrists has been basically telling the cops, shoot first, deal with the consequences later. Then he makes a lot of money as an expert witness testifying in the case in defense of the police officer.
$1,000 an hour.
$1,000 an hour. And the problem with that, of course, is you all need to remember, there is no science of psychiatry. There's no machine they can plug you into that says you are bipolar, you are depressed, you are jubilant, whatever. It's always a subjective opinion by the practitioner, who may themselves have their own issues, and that may be the reason they went into psychiatry, just trying to deal with their own demons and problems. And there is no absolute benchmark as to what constitutes mental illness, and of course today, in order to sell more pills and treatment, everything's a mental illness. They've even come up with a name for the desire for healthy eating, orthorexia nervosa. And only a few days ago, we had this psychiatric association come on out and say that children being picky eaters is a sign of mental illness. So that any school kids who are there turning their noses up at the Michelle Obama school lunches, the school can say, you're crazy, here's a pill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gotten out of control.
It really has. We're all different individuals, and unfortunately, because there is a financial incentive in terms of selling pills and whatnot, they describe any normal human behavior as a mental illness. And remember, the guy who invented the term attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, shortly before he passed away, he went public and said, it's a fictitious condition. We made it up to sell more pills to parents dumb enough to feed these pills to their kids. And now, of course, we're finding out that a lot of these medications prescribed to kids for ADHD trigger extreme episodes of suicidal behavior and violence.
And that's something the drug companies don't want you to know.
Absolutely.
And if you would be interested in finding out if your child's physician has been urging you as a parent to allow this kid to go on XYZ medication, there's a website, ssristories.com or .org.
It's a .org now.
.org, okay. And you can see what kind of devastation this medication can cause, and it's pretty intense, either when someone is just getting on the medication or trying to get off the medication.
Yeah, it's when you're withdrawing from these that you are most at risk of everything stored up in your brain unwinding all at once, and causing problems. One of the Columbine shooters was trying to kick Zoloft at the time. They went postal. We know that the Tennessee shooter was under mental treatment. And it's not the guns, it's the drugs. And there are now multiple websites that are coming online. In addition to ssristories.org, there's a bunch of them out there, and you can find them with a web search engine. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And Lady Claire, what is next on your list of hot topics?
Facebook knows about your health-related Internet searches. Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Oh, I have. Well, go ahead and finish it.
Okay.
I have a comment on that.
All right. A new study finds that 91% of health-related pages relay the URL to third parties, often unbeknownst to the user. And in 70% of the cases, the URL contains sensitive information, such as HIV or cancer, which is sufficient to tip off these third parties that you have been searching for information related to a specific disease.
Well, the comment I have on that one is, first of all, if people don't feel that they can research their medical issues with a certain degree of confidentiality, they'll stop.
Yeah.
And they won't get the information that they need. Second, we know that this information goes to advertisers. In the course of prepping stories for the website, I'll do web searches for things that are not of personal interest, and then inevitably advertisements for those things will show up in pop-up boxes and email and so forth.
I just had that happen.
Yeah. And so the big problem, though, is what happens if your health insurance provider is getting this information and decides they're going to drop your coverage or raise your rates. And it turns out you're researching this information for a friend. Because I've been in that position, in fact, quite recently, where somebody who is not computer savvy had some questions, and so I said, I'll search out some information for you, and I print it out, give it to the person, but I'm the one getting the ads for treatments for this particular medical condition. And if my insurance company gets that information, they're going to have the erroneous idea that I am suffering from creeping blorch.
Yes. And it doesn't matter whether you search for health-related topics using Google or supposed privacy-focused search engines like DuckDuckGo, Facebook is still likely to find out about it. That's because websites like the CDC's HIV information page contains share and like buttons for Facebook. And that's all it takes to let the social media site know that you visited the page, even if you never click either of these buttons. Sites like WebMD will share information with as many as 34 different domains. That's pretty intense.
That is very intense.
Yeah,
and, of course, the new laws that are coming on down is that this information, there's no more restrictions on it. Anybody who gets the information from your web browsing habits is free to sell it to anybody, give it to the government, no warrants required. The potential for misuse is clearly there.
Yeah.
And again, what happens if you are researching, for example, cancer on behalf of a friend or neighbor, and then all of a sudden your health insurance carrier drops you because you had a pre-existing cancer condition you didn't share with them? And you're going to go in and say, no, I was researching that for somebody else. No, we can't take the chance. There are no safeguards whatsoever. It's just open season on your private life.
And this is particularly frightening if you consider that Experian, one of the websites found to share health searches with third parties, makes most of its money not from advertising, but by gathering personal data for credit reports, for example, and selling that information to clients. According to Silogs, it makes sense that if Experian knows you're looking at a page concerning a particular disease, the company will store the information in a personal data file about you.
Well, it goes even worse than that because some of these credit rating agencies are now trying to evaluate your credit worthiness on the basis of who you are friends with on Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, that if your Facebook followers are all very rich people, you will get a high credit rating, and if most of your Facebook friends are minimum wage factory workers, they'll knock you down. And that, too, is open for abuse because when you're somebody like Claire or I, where we're using Facebook for promotional purposes only, and we don't really know these people, we have lots and lots of Facebook friends that are spread all across the social and economic strata of the country.
Right.
It is completely irrelevant to try and analyze us on the basis of those people, and yet that's the newest big deal data thing. We're going to learn about your credit worthiness based on who your friends are on Facebook. We don't control who our friends are unless somebody's really abusive and annoying. I don't kick people out. I don't keep count. I don't care. You know, it's not really part of my personal life, and yet it's being treated as this, you know, clear glass window into your most intimate secrets.
Yeah. I'd like to move on to something international in its nature. Apparently, the Turkish Stream project has been suspended indefinitely. Now, Turkish sources indicated that the suspension may be the result of a disagreement about the amount of the tariff reductions awarded by Russia. However, on the 22nd of last month, President Barack Obama demanded that his Turkish opposite number immediately halt their participation in this project, which Obama said would destabilize U.S. supremacy in Western Europe.
In other words, they don't want anybody else trading gas for any of the currencies than the U.S. dollar.
That's it.
Where this is really going to hurt is, remember, Russia was using the Turkish Stream to funnel jobs and funding to Greece. And if Obama tells Turkey to cancel the Turkish Stream and Turkey cancels the Turkish Stream, that is going to accelerate Greece's race towards complete default and leaving of the European Union. And it's another example of how the foreign policy decisions of the United States government are not thought all the way through for their possible ramifications and consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to go over now. It's about the one-year anniversary of the death of Ferguson's Michael Brown.
Yes.
And apparently an online group dedicated to police officers posted a wildly offensive, quote-unquote, memorial to slain Ferguson, the kid who was killed by police.
Michael Brown.
Yeah, Michael Brown. And there was a huge public outcry against it, and someone had the horse sense to remove it. But I have to wonder, so close to the anniversary, are people attempting to create a ruckus again, to put this country in a state of war?
Well, not so much war as riots, because we understand right now the U.S. government is terrified of the American people. Mm-hmm. We don't believe them anymore. We don't trust them anymore. We're not doing what they say anymore. We're being disobedient. And the only way that they can get around that is to get rid of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which they're ignoring for the most part, but still tacitly have to say, yeah, we're bound by the Constitution. How they can get away from that is if there are mass riots in multiple cities justifying a national state of emergency, temporary, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, suspension of the Bill of Rights, and the declaration of martial law. And we have seen the government trying to create these small, controllable uprisings before. There was Adam Kokesh's, thankfully, aborted armed march into Washington, D.C. There were the riots they tried to kick up when Michael Brown was killed. Now they're trying to recycle and regurgitate that. And there is absolutely no question. That's a big reason for the morphing of the police brutality against all Americans into the appearance of being a racial issue of white cops against black people.
When it's not.
When actually more whites are being killed by the police than the blacks, but they're selling it as racial discord. We'll be right back. America, pardon me. Welcome back to the show. And Lady Claire, next.
Next is a warning, if you will, by an ex-neo-Nazi right-wing extremist on the verge of doing something horrible over same-sex marriage. It seems to me rather strange, and any condemnation of people for gender identity issues, I don't understand.
Well, any condemnation of anybody for any issues here, as long as they're minding their own business and not hurting each other.
Yeah.
And, of course, my feeling about this is if you are opposed to gay marriage, don't marry a gay. Problem solved. But we have way too many people running around this country whose entire sense of self-worth rests on being offended by something.
Yep.
And they are grist for the politically correct propaganda mill.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time looking at the idea of Nazis somehow being opposed to gay marriage, because the Nazi Germany, well, they were pretty intolerant of the gays as well.
Yeah.
So, but it does seem like this is another one of those fanned-up fringe issues that the candidates want to campaign on, because they don't want to talk about what Donald Trump is talking about, which is illegal immigration, bringing floods of infected and criminal people into our country.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to go out on a limb here. As most of our listeners and viewers know, I'm a Christian. I'm a Methodist. And the two things that I take away, well, three actually, that I take away from my faith is to be loving to everybody. There are no exceptions in the New Testament. And to be tolerant and non-judgmental. That's something that's really, really important, I think, for people of my faith. And gender is a continuum. It's not just one thing or the other. There may be people who are in various places on that spectrum. But it's not black and white.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a pure male or a pure female. All of us have components of both that generally tend to line up personality with the biological reality. Sometimes the mechanism breaks. The more intelligent somebody is, the more they are likely to incorporate aspects of both sides, both kinds of personalities.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. The idea that you're a pure male or a pure female and you should hate the gays, that's just another way that the collection plates get filled. And it is amazing. It is easier to gain power and wealth selling hate than selling tolerance.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's human nature. Oh, you need to hate these people and give me money and I will help hate them for you. But if you ever stop and think about it, a brand newborn baby is not offended by nudity. They're not offended by certain words. They're not offended by certain lifestyles. All of that has to be taught to the child in order to give those who would exploit that child easy handles to grab onto. Oh, you should be ashamed you're not wearing clothes. Here, come on down to the clothing store and spend all your money. You should be shocked at certain words so that when I use the words, I can break your chain of thought. and win the argument. You should be offended by people of that color or that orientation or speaking a different language, because if you will give me your political support and your campaign donations, I will protect you from these people I have taught you to be afraid of and offended by.
It's like that wonderful song from South Pacific.
Yes.
You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught.
That was one of the most brilliant things Rodgers and Hammerstein
Yes.
put in that particular musical.
Yes.
And, it was at a time when people were pulling back from the polarization and hate of World War II. And now we're being driven back into it again. Oh, you got to hate the Russians. Oh, every Russian I've met's a nice guy. Well, you met the wrong ones. You've got to hate the Russians. You've got to hate the Iranians and got to hate the Chinese. And you've got to hate the Nemtons and you got to hate the Martians and the people on Saturn, and you got to hate them all, because hate is what makes us strong.
You know, when you mentioned Iran, I had a flashback to a wonderful video, and if you can find it out there, and by the way, it was so honest that it got pulled by YouTube. It's called Don't Tell Mother I'm in Iran. And it talks about the current life of the Jewish community there and how the Jews are thriving, and which is a totally different picture than you're going to get from Israel. But it's worth looking at, because the young man who does the videography, very charming individual, and he is inside synagogues, he is inside the home of the Majlis, or the Parliament of Iran. And I've got to tell you, Tehran's on my bucket list. I would love to go because of the history of art and music and culture and the diversity. I'd love to see it. I'd also love to talk to younger Iranians about what they think should be the next positive steps for their country. I think it would be great.
Well, as it turns out, there is a copy of it up at YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and post it to WhatReallyHappened.com.
Thank you, honey.
But you need to also understand, not too long ago, Israel made a very generous financial offer to Jewish people living in Iran, financed by you, the American taxpayer, that they would give all these people huge amounts of money if they would merely move to Israel to bolster the Jewish state. And the Iranian Jews basically said, no, we're comfortable here, our lives are here, our friends are here, our businesses are here, our roots are here. I think it's like the oldest surviving synagogue in the world is in Iran.
Yeah.
And Israel, of course, got their knickers in a little twist. How dare you live over there and be happy in Iran? We're trying to convince everybody that the Iranians are killing Jewish babies in Hitler's leftover gas ovens. And they're really upset. And this documentary, Don't Tell My Mother I'm in Iran, shows the Iranian people as being just like us. In fact, I'm looking at the clip it's playing. They're out there skiing. They're in their ski clothes with their skis and their schussing and stem Christying and all the rest of it.
And let me guess, the ladies are not having their heads covered.
No, the ladies are not having their heads covered.
Yeah.
The ladies in the Middle East who cover their heads do so because of their religious traditions. Okay, it's the fashion, it's what they want to do.
And remember, we have the same things with nuns in certain orders, in certain Catholic orders. They cover their hair.
There are many Catholic churches where today you cannot walk in without covering your head. There are Jewish synagogues where you cannot walk in without covering your head.
Right.
It's a religious thing, and it's their choice to live that way because that's their comfort zone, and it's only American arrogance that goes over and says, oh, these women are being impressed. We have to make them dress just the way we do, and that will be freedom when we make them dress the way that we do and buy from the American clothes manufacturers.
And let's skip on over to another area of the Middle East, Israel.
Yes.
There have been 120 Palestinian prisoners going collectively on a hunger strike.
Yes.
And they have done this because it's in protest of the inhumane treatments they receive in Israeli prisons. And they want the Israeli prisons to stop humiliating them, such as breaking into their sections, conducting intrusive inspections of the prisoners, and beating prisoners who are being moved from one jail to another.
And in many cases, these people are arrested political prisoners.
Yeah.
They haven't actually done anything. Israel's government has said, we think they might be a problem down the road, therefore we're going to go ahead and grab them.
Yeah.
And it's just another proof that Israel is, in fact, an apartheid state.
Yeah, when someone like Desmond Tutu says it, and no one understands better than this very wonderful clergyman, when Desmond Tutu says it's apartheid, it's apartheid.
It's not even just Desmond Tutu. A
Yeah.
lot of the former officials of the former South African government who were supporting apartheid in South Africa are saying, yeah, we were an apartheid nation, but oh boy, those Israelis, they've got it down.
They've
perfect.
got it nailed.
Yeah, they're the world champions. The Olympic gold medal for apartheidness goes to Israel. We're going to have to take another break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. I'm looking at this headline from governmentslaves.info. U.S. Coast Guard loses 4,000 pounds of cocaine. That's 2 tons. Okay. Somehow, I don't think it was lost, and it's bringing a new definition to the phrase on the high seas.
I think it does. I'm sure it's just going to be repackaged and redistributed,
Probably.
Yeah.
All right, what's on your mind?
Apparently, Secretary Kerry ducked the issue of human rights in Egypt's strategic dialogue. The level of repression under the al-Sisi government is just unabated. We're looking at torture. We're looking at jailing people. We're looking at executions for being just the wrong party. And
yeah, but we're seeing the same thing in Qatar. I mean, it's a brutal, repressive regime, but as long as it's a U.S. puppet, it's all very, very cool. Yeah. And for those who have not been paying attention, what's going on is there used to be another U.S. puppet ruler over Egypt. His name was Hosni Mubarak, and he ran Egypt for the benefit of the U.S. and Israel until the Egyptian people got sick and tired of him. They kicked him out, and they put in Morsi. But the U.S. and Israel are just out there saying, you will not break free from our rule. Once you are a province, you will stay provinced. And so they organized a counter-revolution that kicked out Morsi and put in our current gentleman, who is back to basically crushing the Egyptian people back down and running Egypt for the benefit of the U.S. and Israel. And that's what's going on back and forth. And if he keeps going, there'll be another counter-revolution, and they'll change governments again.
And when this happens, Mike, it's like the U.S. government looks in amazement as though they couldn't put it together. They're doing exactly the same thing.
Oh, they only hate us for our freedoms.
Oh, please.
They hate us because we have Disneyland and Miley Cyrus.
Please. The situation in Bahrain is terrible, but it is home to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet.
Yes.
So we have been helping the Al Khalifa monarchy, which is Sunni, against his own people who are Shia Muslims.
Well, there's hardly anything new with that. When the U.S. overthrew the government of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran in 1953, they sent in the CIA to train the Shah's secret police, the Savak, in how to torture and terrorize the Iranian people into silent obedience. Same thing was repeated in Chile in 1973 when they ousted Salvador Allende and imposed the dictator Pinochet. That was the era, the CIA was down there teaching the Chilean government to grab families and torture the children while making the parents watch from inside a cage as a way of keeping the Chilean people. The reality is every one of these U.S. interventions in another country results in horrible crimes against humanity for the targeted population. The U.S. is always claiming we're bringing democracy and human rights to the countries. They haven't actually done it even once in all these years.
And this very terrible human rights trampling behavior is absolutely business as usual for this government, no matter who is sitting in power, be it Democrat or Republican.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, the beatings go on.
That's true. The beatings will go on until morale improves.
Yeah, probably close to a last topic. Apparently, the U.S., UK, World Bank are among aid donors complicit in Ethiopia's war on indigenous tribes, opening the way to agricultural agribusiness internationally. And,
if you're going to take over a country and grow your GMO crops there, you got to get rid of those people who are living over your land or living over your oil or whatever. That actually goes back to Richard Nixon and National Security Study Memorandum 200, which said we've got to depopulate these countries if we're going to go in and simply take over their resources.
Yeah, and what they're doing is relocating various ethnic groups in Ethiopia, the Mursi and Bodhi ethnic groups, because the government wanted to do a large sugar project where these people just had the bad taste to live.
Yes.
And so they were all being forced to be evicted and resettled. And we're talking about thousands of Ethiopians. And vast lands have been given to international and domestic companies. Just huge amounts. And the people who live there are irrelevant.
They're living in shacks now, shanty towns and so forth. And so just like South Africa, the ghettos down there. That's where they're all going to be headed. Little corrugated steel shack towns, and that's where all of you go until you die and get out of our way.
And speaking of South Africa, you know, it is really unfortunate that the African National Congress has not really benefited the people who have supported them all through these years. And many people are still living in really terrible conditions. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, unfortunately, it is an historical fact that when a government falls, very often the new government coming in to replace them will start thinking, well, we can basically behave the same way, live the same high lifestyle and do the same abuses, and the people won't rebel because they're tired from the last one. Usually they're proven wrong.
Yeah.
We talk about the French Revolution as a singular, but the reality is it was several revolutions in rapid succession from 1793 to 1808. Was inspired by the American Revolution, but after the first French Revolution, the new incoming revolutionary government started acting like they were the royalty and the bankers, so there was another revolution that sent them to the guillotine.
Yep.
And then that new incoming government started getting abusive and greedy, so they went to the guillotine. And finally, after enough of these governments had gone to the guillotine, France got a government that was very deeply respectful of the French people and their needs.
Right. And I am very, very concerned with South Africa that we may see a Zimbabweification of the country, especially when Bishop Desmond Tutu does pass, because he was part of that original democracy movement.
Yes, he was. Yeah. And what we saw in Zimbabwe, besides the runaway hyperinflation, is a black population that decided that what equality really meant was reversing the earlier racism and prejudice, and the white population, even those who had never been part of the apartheid system, paid a very heavy price. We're seeing that here in the United States of America, where there are these extreme black activists out there who are saying that the only solution to the racist crisis in the United States is for the blacks to be in charge over the whites, to make the whites slaves. And the bottom line is, you don't end racism by being racist.
No,
you don't
you
end
can't.
discrimination by discriminating. You don't make the world peaceful at the point of a gun.
No.
And again, even in the feminist movement, where they spent all the 1990s about poor, oppressed women, and instead of working for equality, certainly the gender feminists came on out and said, well, women should be in charge and you men should just go away and not bother us. And again, getting back to last night's debate, Megyn Kelly's face when she tried to bait Donald Trump over that, you know, how you call women, and he came back with Rosie O'Donnell, and the audience laughed and everything. You could just see the fury on Megyn Kelly's face. How dare you not roll over and pretend to be dead when I attack you? I'm a woman. I'm a feminist. You're just a man. You're not supposed to one-up me in view of millions of TV viewers.
And let me tell you something, honey.
Yeah.
At 66 years of age, there is no war against me. I have developed a skill set that I can use to earn money comfortably. And I treat people with respect. They treat me back with respect.
Well, actually, there is a war against you, but it's not because you're a woman. It's because you're my wife, unfortunately. And
well,
I feel really bad about that.
I can't do anything about that.
Well,
I'm not going anywhere.
Well, maybe somewhere down the road here. I mean, and that's actually a reality. The evil ones out there were not content with merely wrecking my career in Hollywood. They have done everything they can to keep Claire's music from getting out there. We actually had one of our demo singers, after the demo was done and the credits, came back and said that, her school administrators had talked to her. She's not supposed to hang out with us. She's not supposed to do music for Claire. And we had to basically reissue the video, take her name out of the credits, and change the website and everything. That is, how oppressive the dictatorship has become, where they even go after the creative works of your wife. And Claire's music isn't offensive to anybody.
No,
and
definitely.
But that's the way they like to play. Just crush their opponents and not allow them any opportunity to go on out and do what they're going to do, including the hacking of our servers, which I'm going to have to deal with this weekend. There's the music. Time for Claire and I to get out of here and enjoy what's left of our Friday afternoon. We are going to be back Monday on the Genesis Communication Network. Until then, have a good weekend. Stay safe. Stay skeptical. Stay informed. Make good choices. talk to all your friends and family about what's going on. There's a big schism opening up between reality and what Fox News is telling everybody. We need to get in there and emphasize that divide.
Absolutely.
All right. Aloha, America.